but it was a great experience. It wasn't all bad. I met some amazing, amazing citizens in this county on both sides of the aisle that just really was a great conversation. And I met far right people that I could sit down with, which was hard to do, and have that frank discussion. And I'm not mentioning her name, but everyone in this room will know who she is. I sat down and we talked issues, and she really was like, wow, I had you as this far left leaning AOC Democrat. I said, I'm not. I am a Democrat. The Democrat Party is the party that I align with from the 80s and 90s. Now, I know that dates me a little bit. I'm not, a Barbara Jordan.
As long as it's not the one of the 60s, you're fine.
Yeah.
Welcome back. It's part 2 of the conversation with Mr. Tuttle.
Part 2.
We should have changed outfits.
We should have. Right.
Hold up.
Comb my hair a different way.
Polo shirt on. Hold on. I have a. All right.
So
like we said, but we got to go around the horn because people don't know who we are.
Okay.
We're empowering the people, igniting change. We're going to go around the horn real quick, and I'm going to turn my volume off.
All right. I am Brandon Russell. I am a concerned citizen in St. Mary's County, follow local politics, ran for commissioner last year, and I consider myself nosy enough to want to know what's going on around here.
And I am Chris Hill. I'm a realtor in Southern Maryland, and actually, I don't include this much, but I'm the incoming president for the Maryland State Association of Realtors.
Heyo.
BJ, your turn. My name is BJ Hall, and I am a concerned citizen. I also ran for county commissioner. It was one of the best and worst times of my life, but I definitely enjoyed meeting. I think that's when I got to know the other 3 gentlemen in this room the best over that period of time. I spent more time with you all doing that window of time than I had in my previous 8 years here in the county. But I'm the former president of NAACP, founder of Reach Back and Lift One, and I just love St. Mary's County. We also have a guest with us, Mr. Tuttle, Mr. Steve Tuttle. You saw him on the last episode, and if you skipped this last episode, you need to go back and watch it.
That's right.
A lot of good information there about housing. Mr. Tuttle, can you introduce yourself?
Good evening. Thank you for having me on. My name is Steve Tuttle. I am a Navy veteran. I work on base for a contractor as an aviation life support systems technician. I was the previous chair for the Wrapping Arms Around Mini program, which is warm. I am now currently the vice chair for the Animal Control Advisory Board, and I am a very nosy and concerned citizen.
How did nosy slide into this equation?
Nosy. Got to be nosy. You got to know what's going on.
So.
Right.
It was the information czar. He put it in there.
He did. Right. I noticed that.
I started it.
So, all right. Since we're not going to go into what concerns you this week, but I will ask each of you, what are you having in your cups right now?
I'll
start. I don't have a cup, but I will share. I'm drinking a nondescript strawberry flavored seltzer.
I have 2 cups.
Oh.
I refuse to incriminate myself in what's in which. Let's just say I have Dr. Pepper in this one.
Okay.
And Mr. Tuttle, I know you said you have an empty. What used
empty.
To be there? What used to be there? Since you're at home, it's okay.
It's a nice Sailor Jerry and some Coke.
Good run.
Roger that.
Uh-huh.
I have some type of peach drink with a whiskey base. It's delicious.
He's at the happy hour that we weren't invited to. Just saying.
It's a sore point for Chris.
It is.
Just so you have the rest of the invitations for the rest of the year. On each final Friday, the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Tau Lambda Lambda chapter, we will be hosting a happy hour down at Grill 13 in Waldorf, Maryland. Come through, enjoy.
I'll
Networking.
show up now. Don't think I won't.
There it is. It's a
And
good
we
time.
expect a
Make sure you come down.
sponsorship.
Yeah.
Hold up. We expect one too.
That's funny.
All right. So now we want to pick up our conversation because Mr. Tuttle, apparently you're one of the star witnesses at the budget hearing. Can you tell us about your testimony at the budget hearing? Well, hold up. Can you tell everybody about the budget hearing? Well, it's like describe what the budget hearing was, why we had it, and then let's talk about your concerns with the budget.
So the budget hearing, I think it was 4 issues: the budget, excise tax, the tax for Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department, and what am I missing?
Constant yield.
Constant
property
yield.
tax. Chris's
Property
favorite.
tax. Yeah. So my stance on it is I think I threw everybody for a little bit of a loop since I did run as a Democrat. My statement is, when you have your hands in my pocket, I want to see where the money's going. I have some concerns. I see some of the money and I see that there's organizations being taken care of, and that's great. I'm all for that. I'm not saying that they're wrong, but there's some things that we're lacking in the county. And I think that which the county doesn't have any skin in the game. And I think the county needs to have skin in the game now. I don't like the excise tax. I'd like to see it revenue neutral. But if you're going to do it, I want to see it lockboxed to the exact organizations that it's supposed to go to. And it needs to be a percentage. So if you have a good year or a bad year, the percentage of that excise tax goes to wherever you say it needs to go to. I don't like it going into a fund where the elected government can do whatever they want with it. So, but that's just me. I'm all about helping and making sure government works, but at what cost?
You don't trust our elected officials?
Not all the time.
And that's a healthy respect. That's what that is.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yes. It's always healthy to question what's really going on with your tax money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the budget hearing, there was way more people there than I was expecting. I think there was more people there than there was last year, actually.
There was.
My takeaway from it was everybody was concerned. Most people were concerned about the property tax. And then State's Attorney Sterling spoke and had a number of people there supporting her asks for her budget. So I think those two things definitely stood out. If you follow me on Facebook, you may have seen a suggestive graphic that I posted that it had only a hint of tabloid journalism there. But I did that to get people's attention because, one of the things that we might get to a little bit later, or we could get to it now, whichever, but I heard a lot while I was campaigning last year, like, oh yeah, I like what you're saying. Are you a Democrat or a Republican? And when I said Democrat, it was like, oh no, I'm never voting for you. Tax and spend Democrat. You want to, tell me how to live my life and all this stuff. And so, and I explained this in the post, but the reason I made that graphic was because these folks said they weren't going to raise taxes. And, a lot of times when people vote around here, they do vote party line without knowing exactly what a candidate stands for. And I think that, people need to do a little bit more research, and we need to be reminded that these politicians ran on something and that they said they were going to do certain things and not going to do certain things. And we need to hold them accountable for that. I mean, that's just the long and short of it. There it is.
Yeah, I pulled it up too. The one thing I'll say is, I will say I'm going to call out one commissioner, and I'll give him a little bit of a plug because I know he ran on lower taxes. I did an interview with him on another podcast, and that was Commissioner Ostro. And I will say he had a very good point, and that is, he would have to, in order to raise taxes, he'd have to go out there and say there's a real legitimate reason, and this is it, right? I was wrong. This is what's happened, and this is what's caused that. And since then, I think I've talked to most of the commissioners, and there's a big difference between this excise tax. We need to separate them, right? The excise tax issue, although it's very serious, and But the property tax issue and the constant yield is a misnomer, right? And that misnomer is that if they just keep it the way it is, they're not raising taxes, right? That's the perception. Right. But the truth is, if your assessed value goes up, you're paying more taxes, right?
Yep.
Right.
And that's more income to the county. Nice job, Brandon. I see that.
Yeah. I didn't do that.
Oh, BJ did it, right. But I mean, we have to, that's why we ask for the constant yield where we charge, they lower the percentage because the assessed values are higher. Lowering the percentage brings it to a revenue neutral kind of situation. I hate to use that word, but and that's why we fight for the constant yield, so that, you know, now there's also arguments on the homestead credit as well, right? Like St. Mary's does put a lower percentage. That is, if it's your primary residence and your constant and St. Mary's County, I believe it's 3% now. I think that's where it is.
I think so.
If the assessments go over 3%, you're locked in at 3% as long as it's your homestead, your primary residence. But you see here, back to the other issue. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but the truth is, the reason that's not necessarily the solution here is because many people have investment properties. It's not their primary residence.
Right.
And that directly affects the rental market. Right? And people don't realize that. If I'm going to be paying more in property taxes on my investment property, I hate to use investment property because also a lot of veterans get here and have to relocate and come back and they keep a house. But anyway, you're going to be paying more in rent. That's the bottom line. You're going to be paying more in rent. So
I feel like you just blame the increase of rental prices on veterans. I don't support that comment at all.
Wow.
Well, let's dig into this a little bit. We're talking about property taxes. There's 2 bills sitting on the county commissioner's desk passed by Annapolis to give property tax discounts to disabled veterans under 100% into an emergency workers force, which is police, fire, rescue, EMS. Right. It's not happening. They haven't touched it. It's buried in the county commissioners and it's sitting there for them to make a decision on. And I bring it up over and over again, even brought it up on the campaign trail. Brandon did as well. And they said they can't afford it. But I'm looking at the money and I'm like, you can't afford it. And that money that we would save, me personally, I would funnel right back into small businesses right here in the county. It's a win-win. And a lot of veterans like myself would. So it actually, you would make more money in the long run because think of everything you're taxed on: alcohol, gas, cigarettes, DMV, property tax. I mean, you're taxed on everything, and the county has some of that goes to the county. So, I mean, there is ways to make it, but I brought it up to somebody like, well, why should veterans and they get a discount? I'm like, okay, why can't I as an average citizen? And I'm like, oh, fair enough. That's fair. I see what you're saying. But again, you know, there's ways we can do this that can benefit everyone, but how to do it.
Brandon, am I wrong, or was that bill passed in Annapolis this year? Did that become a requirement?
There was a veterans tax credit that was passed, I think, a year or two ago that hasn't been enacted. And then Jack Bailey had one this year that would allow the commissioners to define what they consider as a public safety officer. And then based on that definition, offer property tax credits to those individuals who would qualify.
Got it.
Yeah, and we did talk about that during the campaign last year, and I think that the county could probably afford to enact those tax credits if the commissioners chose to do so. And backing up to Chris, what you said about Commissioner Ostro, he has been very. I will give him credit too. He has been very upfront about how. He doesn't support raising the property taxes. I've heard him say that he would prefer to keep the constant yield in place. I think he may even have said that on the Get Real podcast you talked about. And I will give him credit where credit is due for that. I think with the other thing too that I also would like to give the commissioners credit for is that they are talking more openly than they used to about constant yield. And I think that that is due in large part to public pressure asking them about it and what does this really mean? Because before, like I said, a couple of years ago, they were not explaining it. And so on the back end of that, though, something that I don't agree with that Annapolis did is they passed a bill this year saying that you no longer have to advertise property tax rates unless you are choosing to increase the rate itself. So right now they have to, by law, advertise, the property tax will be increasing, but the commissioners could choose to adopt the constant yield, which would keep the same revenue as last year and decrease the property tax rate by whatever is necessary in order to keep the revenue neutral and keep it the same as last year. So they have to advertise like that now. So going forward, they will not have to advertise anything about property tax or constant yield unless they are actually changing the property tax rate and increasing it from 0.8478, which is what it is now. So even if they don't increase it, if assessments go up next year, your property tax will go up next year, and you just will not really hear about it because they won't have to advertise it.
Yeah,
but it's included in the budget work. During the budget process, though, I mean,
it is.
You figure that they want to adjust the process in order to eliminate the discussion. So it still will be some transparency, at least here in St. Mary's County.
Yeah, it still will be part of the conversation. I just think that I'm not really a fan of that bill that Annapolis did because I think that it is a good thing for people to be aware of and for it to have to be advertised. Now that doesn't stop the commissioners from advertising it if they want to, but it's their call totally now.
We need to go back and see who sponsored that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what the bill number is. I was just reading about it the other day.
We have to find it.
Well, I think we should transition out of budget talk. Let's talk about the campaign season a little bit and kind of what we saw last year. It was a very different experience to go through an election year as a candidate versus, John Q. Public, who just, kind of peripherally knows there's an election going on and then maybe goes and votes when it's time to do so.
Or to
we'll
run
let
as
you
a
go
Democrat.
first, Steve. Oh, yeah, to run as a Democrat. We'll let you go first, Steve. You're the guest.
I was honored to run. I went into the campaign with open eyes. I learned a lot of what not to do and what to do better. I did not expect such, how can I word this carefully? Visceralness from some Republicans in the county. And I'm not going to name names because I'm not going to have a lawsuit on me, but the very racist, homophobic things that were said directly to me on the campaign trail by elected officials that represent this county was disgusting. And to see that it's a numbers game for a Democrat. Like a Democrat, there's not numbers for us for registered voters wise. I think there's a 5,000 registered voter difference between Republicans and Democrats. And the independents, I think, are 1,700 or 2,700. It's a pretty good amount.
I think it's 30 something Republicans, maybe 25,000 Democrats, and about 17,000 independents. So there's a ton of independents down here.
I mean, my goal in my campaign was to really reach across the political aisle, and I tried to do that as much as I could and had some great conversations. I think what was very heartening, and Brandon will probably touch base on this, is on election night, I was at Banneker Elementary working there. And I met this lady that Rita Weaver had introduced me to, and she's like, "This is my buddy Steve. He's running for county commissioner. Hear about him." Kind of just being supportive, which was great. And the lady was like, "Oh my goodness. Oh. And she had that Republican page. And she's like, "Well, where are you?" And I said, "I'm not a Republican. Can't vote for you." So people in this county vote party line. It's very obvious. And they
people
don't
across the country. Do.
I don't know. I mean, in this county, I've never seen it.
Oh, No,
so
no, no.
far.
I'm gonna get on you on this one. Let me tell you why.
Well, hold up. Let me finish.
Because this county was the other way around. It was the exact opposite just 20 years
94,
ago.
95.
Just 20 years ago, it was the exact opposite. And let me tell you something. I know, because I always say, they used to call me, in my family, they call me Alex P. Keaton. That's a generational thing for anybody who may not remember that, because I grew up a Republican in a Democratic household forever. All of my St. Mary's County family were all Democrats. Today,
they're Republicans.
They have changed parties. Yeah. And what's caused that? That's the root of the conversation.
So
yeah,
I've said
BJ,
it before.
you got something to say.
Go ahead, BJ.
Well, one, I want to just jump on Chris about him being a sensitive Republican, because he came out of the woodwork. He was quiet as hell, and all of a sudden he was like, "I take offense."
No, I did not take offense. I don't get offended. But I think it's important for us to recognize, look, here's the thing. I too have been on election day and campaigned for certain candidates, and I've had the nastiness come out from the other party as well. So it really is not just, it's just some extremism, and we've talked about that from day one, right? Like, extremism is the problem. It is the problem. It is from everybody's standpoint.
Well, I mean,
I would say it's not. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, BJ.
Well, as a person who ran as a Republican, nobody believed me that I was a Republican. But no, it was one of those things where things that came in my direction, not directly. I think people were a little nervous about saying things to me personally. But I mean, the scuttlebutt around me and my campaign, it was uncomfortable, especially since it was cloaked in mystery, because nobody would be direct with you. It was like, "Oh, BJ, I love you. Glad you went to West Point, served the country, and this and that. You're such a great guy.
Right.
You're so smart and that." But then all of a sudden, it was like, "Oh, BJ, let me tell you, man, I can't believe they're talking about you like this." It was like, "Who?" It was like, but some people were direct.
You didn't know who to trust at times.
Huh?
Sometimes when you're on the campaign trail, you couldn't know who to trust. Like, there's Democrats, so they're still registered Democrats in this county. They are not Democrats. They vote Republican. They are, but they just are, they haven't changed. And then you get those people pulling you aside. "Oh, well, you need to do this and this," and they're almost setting you up, trying to find out the inner workings of your campaign. They can go tell your opponent, which in many cases, I mean, I remember when I filed, and within a week, I get a reporter calling me saying, "You're lying. You don't live where you say you do," because somebody who writes for a tabloid newspaper that's online, I'm not mentioning that individual's name, submitted. Well, I had just bought the townhome, so my paperwork doesn't get processed for the taxes until December. But they were using, I mean, they just constantly came out and were, in which I couldn't understand, because a Democrat hadn't ran for the seat in 8 years, number one. Republicans outnumber Democrats immensely, but why I was such a threat? Why? I mean, the first letter to the editor was just, I mean, visceral to somebody I have never met, and I don't even think it's an actual person. But and I mean, just comparing me, because I say I'm a moderate Democrat, and I think everyone on this podcast knows what a moderate Democrat is. They're just left of center. There's even my own party would call me a dino. "You're a Democrat name only." No, that's not true, because I've always been a Democrat since 1995, when I could register to vote in Anne Arundel County. But it was a great experience. It wasn't all bad. I met some amazing citizens in this county on both sides of the aisle. That just really was a great conversation. And I've met far right people that I could sit down with, which was hard to do, and have that frank discussion. And I'm not mentioning her name, but everyone in this room will know who she is. I sat down and we talked issues, and she really was like, "Wow, I had you as this far left leaning AOC Democrat." I said, "I'm not. I am a Democrat." The Democrat Party is the party that I align with from the 80s and 90s. Now, I know that dates me a little bit. I'm not, a Barbara Jordan.
As long as it's not the one of the 60s, you're fine.
Yeah. So it was hard. I will say this. I'm not telling you I'm going to run again, and I'm not telling you I'm not. It was a great experience, and I have something on my resume that a lot of people can't say they did.
Yeah,
I ran for office.
Yeah,
that's very
Put
cool.
my money where my mouth was.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you said, Steve. It was a very good experience overall. There were times where the bad was way higher than the good, and there were more times like that than I would care to have happened. And it does make it hard for you to know who to trust, because you don't really, you hear things like BJ said, you hear things, but you don't hear them directly said to you. You hear them from other people and other circles.
I think that's important, because I'm going to share this. This is all about that openness and transparency of our show. And that's one thing I love is, my impression of Brandon coming into this was not who Brandon really is. Right. And my expectation of him is some radical lefty. Right. That's what was planted. I mean, truth is, and we all know he really is, but I'm just kidding.
Right. Under the dark of night.
Right.
That's right.
Right. But no, I mean, Steve, you bring out a good point, and that is, and that, I think the thing that that's what I love about this show, right? We talk about it. We don't agree on everything. We can disagree. It's okay. Right.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's what makes this country great. If we could just be more open about it and not, and the problem is there's so many people that get in their silo.
Our feelings.
I know BJ heard that, right? We go home, we go in our silo, and we don't open our windows and look outside and see what's happening around us, right? And I know I'm not a radical, right? You know how I know that is because I can listen to Steve Tuttle, I can listen to Brandon Russell, and my opinion can change before I finish the conversation.
Well, you know what? Well, our founding fathers could not even agree on when they were doing the Declaration of Independence.
Right, of course not.
How long it took to get that done. So it's okay. Discourse is okay as long as it's done in a civil way.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing I just want to highlight. So I know that you all had your share of struggles, but I built my network here through organizations that lean left.
Right.
And it was so disappointing to see how many people, as soon as I said I was registering and running as a Republican, turned on me like I hadn't given my blood, sweat, and tears to some of the causes. And I'm just like, I wasn't secretly trying to not help you. It was like I was sitting there, I was giving up sleep, giving up time with my kids, giving up money for the same causes right next to you. And as soon as I put an R next to my name, it's like, holy crap, look at BJ. He's this person. And it's just like, did the last 7-8 years mean nothing? And I mean, I spent so many nights crying just because I was angry, and I can't lie to you. Now that I'm working with some of them again, I'm still bitter. I look at them like, and I had to get through that, work through that, because I understand the political landscape, and I understand that people love their party like they love their Jesus, and it's one of those things. But I mean, to have people talk about you, people that you know intimately, you know what I'm saying, like family, and just kind of turn their backs on you. Like I had to get rid of my whole committee because it was one of those things where everything that I would do ended up leaking. And I'm just like, I don't know which one of y'all I could trust. I stopped, and I ended up bringing a few people in.
That was Trisha and Caitlin. It was just
it was the same for me. It was me and maybe two other people doing the day-to-day kind of stuff. And I think BJ, you hit on something that's pretty important, and it ties into what Chris said about people have preconceived notions of who you are, and then you do something that they don't expect, and it kind of makes them look at you differently. And when everything was starting with the campaign last year, and I saw that you were running as a Republican, I was surprised. I was like, wow, okay. But then as I talked to you more when we were out and about, it made sense. It doesn't change because I didn't know you before the campaign. I see you down there, Steve, not me. He didn't believe it. No, but it really is true. When you have the conversations and you get to know people and you see why they feel the way they feel about certain subjects, it does make things more relatable. And I have to say, with, you know, probably a few exceptions, but with very few exceptions, the people who I felt I could take them at their word on the campaign trail the most were the other candidates.
Yeah.
Honestly, because
that makes sense, though.
Campaigning is it's such a personal thing. You really, you know, you take the hits personally, you take the wins personally. And so there's a certain level of understanding, I think, no matter how you feel on a personal level, like whether or not you'd be friends with this person. But there's a level of understanding, I think, among candidates that if you're in it for probably a reason that is very personal to you. And I think that's important to remember, you know, that at least on the local level, I can't speak for state or federal in the corruption levels, but, you know, on the local level, I do feel like a good majority of the people that get involved in this stuff are doing it because they truly care. And
I think
you know, they're coming from a place that they want to help, even if they don't, you know, agree with you.
Yeah, I think so. I think all of them do, really. I think that you wouldn't be out there putting yourself out there. First of all, kudos to you three guys for doing that. I just want to put that out there as well. Like, for you guys to run is a big deal. You know what I mean? It's a lot of hard work, and you're putting your neck out for people to criticize you and be out there. And that's hard, man. That's, you know, you don't see me doing that. You know what I mean? So
not yet.
And it really does tax your mental health.
It does.
BJ, I'm with you. I am just now kind of getting over my bitterness towards things, and I'm getting back out. But, you know, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change anything. I probably would have said my piece to certain individuals when I had the opportunity. It'll arise again. But I also
make sure we get the invite for that.
Oh, trust me.
We're going to bring our cameras on that one.
But I think it's the misconceptions between parties. You know, I think a lot of people were shocked on Tuesday what I said. I don't think they ever thought a Democrat would say what I said. So
at the budget forum,
right. You know, I am not that far left, not in reality individual. And I think almost everybody on here is a Republican, is not far right. But, you know, it is our duty and our civic duty not only to show up to the polling station, but to call out our parties when they're getting it wrong and they're making it just decisive.
That's true.
You know, and true. I'm not saying that. I'm really concerned about the Lincoln dinner and seeing the keynote speaker. That kind of tells me that we haven't learned to just we don't have to agree politically, but we should have a good discussion. So you knew I was going to bring it up, BJ.
So all right. So I started asking questions myself, right? Because it was one of those things. I had people calling me from Baltimore, like, so you going to that dinner, huh? I'm like, when do people start caring about St. Mary's County like that? But what I ended up doing was I asked somebody at the state level. I'm like, because I didn't address Jen because Jen Boyd she's not that person. She's not a person that comes to divide, right? She's strong Republican, but it's one of those things where I think she cares more about strengthening the Central Committee than she does anything else. Right. And what ends up happening is somebody from another level of the organization chooses a speaker that comes down here that aligns with the interests of some of the local Republicans. So it wasn't a leadership decision that's like, hey, let's go get this guy. But it was one of those things where somebody presented this opportunity, and without a better option in front of them, it was like, all right, I think we're going to make this choice. Not saying I'm not trying to excuse it and say that this type of divisive conversation needs to be brought into our county, but at the same time, I don't think that I think it needs to be said that they didn't go looking for him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think it's, it's good to have that understanding about it. Cause when I saw the flyer for it, I was like, okay, interesting choice, and I've talked quite a bit about how, during the campaign and the election last year, that national politics really influences what happens on the local level. And I think at the end of the day, I was on the Democratic Central Committee, and I'm not ever opposed to going back and serving on the Central Committee again. But one of the things that I didn't like about it was that I felt that I couldn't be as honest about certain things as I wanted to be when criticizing the Democratic Party, especially at the state level, because when you're on the Central Committee, you are part of the network. So I do think that it is kind of the responsibility of people on the Central Committee, if they don't agree with that, to make that known and speak up about it. And at the end of the day, the local party is going to be fundraising off of this guy because he's the one that they're attracting people to buy tickets with. And so if you're buying a ticket, you're saying you support, what he has to say, or at least that you're interested. I mean, there's a lot of levels there. Of course, everybody can have their own speaker and can do whatever they want and whatever. But I don't know. I just go back to, it was a very interesting choice.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, some people watch television shows because they don't like some of the actors. So it's like, I hate watch a lot of TV shows myself. I'm not saying that I'm going
so he
to
will
this
be
event.
attending the
I didn't say that. I'm just saying that there are people that hate watch things. I happen to be someone who hate watches Power. I can't stand the show, but people usually say, "Hey, you can't tell me about this show if you don't watch it." It's like, I watched it.
We'll watch it.
Just so I can argue with you.
I'd watch it if it was free. I would. Just for the speech, I'd show up.
This has been really, kind of like interesting conversation, right? Because inner workings of the campaigns, and it's interesting to hear.
Yeah, there's so many layers.
There is, and I thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.
Steve, thank you so much for coming on, for sure. I'm glad you're on. It's really good to hear everybody's, and we like I said, we're probably the best group at this because we have very diverse opinions.
Definitely, and would love to come back if I can.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Only if you bring a woman with you.
Well, hopefully you'll get Miss Dolly.
That's what we're gonna try.
You know what? You and Dolly at the same time actually makes sense.
Oh yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, when we hang up from here, we're heading up to BJ's party.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So we're gonna go party, and everybody, you stay informed,
stay engaged,
and stay empowered.
See you guys.
See ya.
Yeah.